Okay, we're moving along. We've got the radiator and fan shroud set in place today, and it worked out just super easy. Had plenty of room. All we did was made these brackets, and again, nothing's final welded or trimmed up or anything like that. But basically, they bolt in where the original radiator bolted in with some flush hardware. And then we ended up needing a 1-inch spacer, and those are threaded, and the radiator bolts to that. Factory shroud bolts to the radiator, factory hardware. Everything lines up clear. We have factory radiator hoses. We've got a ton of room in here to put our AC condenser. And we set a hood on it today, and everything clears. We got about an inch above the master cylinder, maybe 3/4 to an inch above the turbo air box. Radiator cap, plenty of room. It actually kind of fell in a little cavity up in the hood, plenty of room there. So it's really shaping up. I really like being able to do stuff like this because when you need parts later, you're talking factory radiator hoses, go to Parts House and buy them. Clutch fan, you know, all this cooling system is factory designed to run the AC. I mean, you can sit, our car hauler that's got this setup in it with, it's got a factory type AC unit adapted to a vintage air, and you can just sit and run the air conditioning idling for days, and it does not care. It doesn't get hot, nothing. So that's the nice thing about just letting Ford design it for you instead of trying to figure it out yourself. And you know, bracketry doesn't look bad. Like I say, we'll trim them up a little bit, make them look a little neater. And you can also get aluminum radiators for these, which is what I've got in the car hauler project, that bolt right in place of these. But I'm gonna run this radiator until it gives me trouble. And then that's how low it hangs. That's typical for a diesel of this era, but you know, we're still, even with the frame rails, our front bumper is going to hide most all of that, but still let some air up into it. The middle part of the bumper is going to be a custom winch mount anyway, and then if we wanted to put a little scoop under it, we could scoop some more air up into it, but there's plenty of grill space. I got to make a piece for this grill. Get it evened up there. I just haven't got around to it. Anyway, next steps to try to get the inner fenders put back in it and start working on battery boxes and mounting all this wiring. We've got to cut a slot in the firewall to mount the transmission controller, where everything will plug up with a factory harness. So we got all that to do, and just hook up a few things, and we'll be able to get this thing started and drive it around the property. Oh, and I did do one more thing in the back. I got this piece of metal that we cut out. I got it trimmed up. We'll be able to use this piece, and then we've just got to fill in the sides and the back, weld all that in. I've checked it with seat clearance and everything, and we're fine. So that's working out quite good. And also, I forgot, we did the front cab mount or course port mounts. I did those before I put the weight of the radiator on it so it wouldn't try to sag. I haven't drilled holes for any of the body mounts yet. I want to get all of them built, including the ones that go back under there. And once everything is in place, we'll measure and square and measure and tweak and pull and measure and make sure the body and everything is sitting like it should. And then I need to drill the holes for the bolts through the rubber mounts, and we're good to go. But for now, it's sitting on body mounts. So anyway, I'll add a little more to this as we make some more progress. Okay, we're back on the lift with this project, and I've got the two front body mounts roughed in and attached, and I've decided that I'm actually just going to drill the frame and bolt them. I've only got 2 bolts in right now, just in case for some reason this thing would need to be moved. you know, I've not got so many holes to deal with, but I think we're dead on where we need to be. And you can see here, that's a hole up through the body mount. That's the original body mount for the International, and then this part, of course, came off of the International frame. We just shortened it a little bit because this frame was wider, and fits nice. It's got a tab up on the top that I will probably hammer down and weld once everything is fully bolted in. We know for sure mounts are done and the body's off. You know, for metal work, we'll weld that top, and that's more than enough mount. And as you can see, there's those middle pucks, and they're threaded into the frame at a very strong point, and they sit in a little recess on that cross member, and that's the way it was originally. And then you can see in the back, there's my rear mount, and again, we reused the puck for the F-350, and of course that mount is just tacked in as well, but everything on here is, you know, strong enough to be supporting the body right now. And I haven't drilled the hole for that one, for the bolt yet, because again, we want to get the bed shortened and make sure the bed fits and lines up and nothing weird's going to have to happen there before I finalize all of these mounts. But at least now the body's on here safe and secure, and we can move forward with getting some wiring in it temporarily, which I've already started up top, and get it where we can crank it and move it around. Okay, this will probably be the last installment of this, or last segment of this particular video. I think where I left off, we were doing some work underneath on the mounts, and had been getting some wiring roughed in. So I'm up on top now. We can kind of see how the wiring's beginning to lay, and it looks like a rat's nest, but it will begin to fit and go together as you work it in. The biggest thing right here was, this is your main bulkhead connector that does the entire front harness, front fuse block, you know, everything you see. And we had to cut a hole in the firewall where it bolts together. There's a bolt down in that hole, and sandwiches the multi-pin plug together. And then this opening right here with those wires going through, that's actually the transmission computer. It normally slides in a slot on the firewall, and we're not going to be able to do that on this truck. We've not got room, so I've got an opening big enough that I can get the whole connector inside the truck, and then the computer will mount right on the tow board up above your feet. And that's actually better. You know, we'll seal all this up. Got to make a plate that comes in and covers those wires, but you've got to have that much opening to be able to get the connector through. And that'll put the computer completely inside, which I think makes better sense anyway. There's less chance for, you know, water damage or anything like that. So anyway, and then our outside, this thing's got two fuse panels. The outside fuse panel is this one, and you know, we've got it. It's got studs that go through the fender well, and then this is the vacuum tree. It's still got to be mounted, and there's really very little vacuum on this. It's mainly brake booster, and I'm not sure what this device right here is, but I'll figure it out. I've got a manual for it. I'm wanting to think it's got something to do with cruise control, possibly. I don't know. There's another device that is part of the cruise control as well. But again, this original harness out of the 94, you know, it'll lay. It's made to go right across the core support like that. Goes to the other side. We'll mount the starter solenoid. Battery cables are already set up for double batteries. Got this cable that goes across. I'm waiting on my battery boxes to come back from the powder coaters so we can get those mounted. And then the main engine harness plugs in. I don't know if you can see it, but that's the harness there. It does like the glow plugs and fuel shut off and everything. So, you know, it all lays in place And then this little pigtail harness here, these were the original wiper connections for the 94 F350, but we'll be using the wiper motor from the International, so we'll have to get a little sub harness for that, and mainly just feed it power. That part will be pretty easy. I've got one other thing I've been working on that's wiring related, and it just goes to show the amount of details you got to do on these sometimes. The chassis swaps are really, I think, pretty easy. That's why a lot of people do them, but there's always something or a couple of things that will, you know, like they say, the devil's in the details. So on this one, I'm putting a GM, this is the GM tilt column, and of course we'd already modified it down here for the shifter. That's the ring we put on it, and this is the firewall mount right here. We leave those loose until everything is, you know, set in place, and then we can either clamp it back on or weld it back on so it fits the floorboard perfectly. And we've modified the mounts where it goes, but I wanted to be able to use this complete harness, and the ignition switch from the Ford harness is very complicated. If you look at the diagram of it, I mean, there's a ton of stuff that goes on in this switch. I mean, it's got way more connections than a GM switch does. So what I've done is, in order to keep the wiring simple, and this will literally plug back up to the harness, is I've made a bracket, and it's a crazy looking bracket, but it bolts on where the original GM switch bolts on, and then we've made this adapter piece here. So our switch, you know, our column switch up here activates the Ford switch, and we'll be able to plug it up and everything will work. Now that took probably 4 hours right there, but it would have taken a lot longer to have done a different either put a different wiring harness in the truck. That opens up a can of worms elsewhere. Sometimes we do that. And then on the last one of these cap swaps I did was my ramp truck. I wanted to use the ignition switch on the dash of the F100, and in order to use that basic switch and make it work this harness, it took a relay panel with 9 relays, and some of the relays were like the big 75 amp, because you got a lot of current going through this switch. It has worked flawless for 5 years, but that's a lot of work. It's a lot of expense, and I did not want to go through that on this one. And I had this column that had the key switch in it, so I'm pretty excited that it looks like this is going to work. We'll see. I'm getting ready to put it back in, but anyway, that's where we're at. And I'll probably tie these segments together and go ahead and drop this video, and then continue on. We're not too many days away from being able to start and move this thing around. So anyway, as always, thanks for watching.